In the spring of 2005, a man walked to the center of a television studio in a country torn apart by civil war, and he got down on his knees. He did not beg for money, or power, or mercy, he begged for peace. The ceasefire that followed lasted long enough to change history, and the man who made it happen was not a diplomat or a general, he was a footballer. The question is how a boy from Abidjan arrived at that moment. Didier was born in the Ivory Coast in 1978, into a family that loved him but could not always keep him close. When he was just 5 years old, his parents made a decision that would quietly shape everything that came after. He was sent to live with his uncle in France, thousands of miles from the streets of Abidjan and everyone he had known. He was 5 years old, and he was alone in a world that looked nothing like home. His uncle, a professional footballer himself, gave the boy structure and stability, but also something far more powerful. He gave him a glimpse of what football could be when you truly believed in it. For years he moved back and forth between France and Ivory Coast, never fully rooted in either place, carrying a longing for belonging that he could only seem to quiet when he was on a football pitch. By the time he was a teenager, he had returned to France to pursue football seriously, but the road ahead was nothing like the dreams he had carried across the Atlantic. Rejection came early and it came often. Coaches told him he was too inconsistent, too raw, too late developing to ever compete at a serious level. He was 19 when he was playing in the 5th division of French football, an age when others his size and talent were already signing professional contracts. What the scouts could not see was that his development had simply followed its own timeline, and that inside him was a competitive fire that no amount of rejection could extinguish. He kept training, kept pushing, kept believing in something the world had not yet agreed to believe. If this story of an impossible journey through rejection and war and glory is the kind that moves you, follow Football Untold right now, because the stories we tell here are the ones history forgot to mention. A breakthrough finally came at Le Mans, a modest French club where his performances began turning heads. Then Guingamp, then Marseille. Each step upward was earned through sheer force of will rather than any red carpet welcome. Marseille gave him a platform and he used it brilliantly, but it was a phone call from England, from a club that had decided to rebuild its entire identity around power and desire. That would truly change the trajectory of his life. Chelsea Football Club, freshly transformed by extraordinary investment in 2004, wanted a striker who could carry their ambitions on his back. They wanted someone physical, clinical, and mentally unbreakable. When he arrived in London, the weight of expectation was enormous. The fee was enormous. Everything was enormous, except the patience the media and fans were willing to extend to a striker who needed time to find his feet. His first season was met with criticism. The goals did not flow the way people expected. Pundits questioned the transfer. But behind closed doors, his teammates and coaches were witnessing something extraordinary in training every single day. Then came the goals. And when they came, they arrived with a violence and a drama that felt almost theatrical, as if he understood intuitively that the biggest stages demanded the biggest performances. League titles followed. FA Cups followed. He became the heartbeat of a Chelsea side that dominated English football for years, and his presence in a match carried a psychological weight that defenders across Europe genuinely feared. But it was not just the goals or the titles that built his legend. It was the moments that arrived when everything was on the line and logic said it was already over. The Champions League final of 2012 in Munich stands as perhaps the most dramatic chapter of all. Chelsea were losing in the dying seconds, and the man who had been dropped from the starting lineup rose from the substitutes bench. What happened next? A towering header in the 88th minute, Chelsea equalizing against all probability, is the kind of moment that makes people wonder whether sport is sometimes scripted by something larger than chance. Chelsea won that night on penalties, claiming their first ever European Cup, and he, the man who was supposed to be watching from the sidelines, had written himself into eternity once again. Meanwhile, back in the Ivory Coast, the situation had grown darker. Civil war had split the nation along brutal lines. And as the country fractured, more and more people looked to the one figure who seemed to transcend the divide. He led the national team to their first ever World Cup qualification in 2006, and in the dressing room afterward, soaking wet and shaking with emotion, he made his televised appeal directly to the armed factions fighting across his homeland. He asked the soldiers to lay down their weapons. He asked them to do it in the name of the people. He asked them for just 1 week of peace, and the weapons went quiet. History does not yet fully agree on exactly how much his appeal influenced the ceasefire, and perhaps it never will. But those who were there, on both sides, say that his voice reached places that no political negotiation had managed to touch. He later helped broker the decision to move an Ivory Coast home match to the city of Bouaké, the rebel stronghold. A gesture so audacious and so human that it forced former enemies to sit together in the same stadium. After hanging up his boots at the highest level, he did not disappear. He invested in hospitals, schools, and infrastructure in the Ivory Coast, turning his platform into a tool of genuine reconstruction. The boy who was separated from his parents at 5 years old, who was rejected by youth academies, who was playing 5th division football at 19. That boy became a man who changed the world in ways that go far beyond any trophy cabinet. There is a version of this story that only exists in football record books: the goals, the titles, the finals. But the real story, the one that matters most, lives in the hearts of people who were given hope when they had almost run out of it. Some players win trophies. Some players win wars. And once in a generation, the same person does both. If this story moved you, do not let it end here. Follow Football Untold and stay close, because there are dozens more stories like this one hiding in the shadows of football history, waiting for someone to finally tell them.